Hello and good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everyone back to tonight's episode of Album Rant, and this is going to be episode 61. And as you can see from your screen and the title of this video, I am going to be focusing tonight on British hard rock, heavy metal blues artist Whitesnake. And I'm going to be reviewing their 7th studio album, which is entitled simply Whitesnake. So yes, this is their self-titled album, but it's not their debut album. It's actually their 7th album, which is kind of interesting. But anyways, I also have to start off with an apology. Where was I last week? I am sorry I was not here last week, but I had the King Diamond concert on Friday night, and I did not get back until 2:30 in the morning. My voice was shot, my neck was killing me, my entire body was aching, and I was just in no condition to give you an episode of Album Rant, so I put it off until this week. And I'm really glad to be back, and I'm really glad that y'all are still tuning in and still listening. But anyways, as far as Whitesnake goes, I kind of want to give you a recap on how we got here. I've kind of told this story before, so I'm going to be a lot more brief than I usually am. But as you probably know, they originated out of the remnants of a band called Deep Purple. In 1975, Deep Purple played one of their last shows for a while until their big reunion in the mid-'80s. And at that time, the lineup had David Coverdale on lead vocals, Tommy Bolin on lead guitar, Glenn Hughes on bass guitar, Ian Pace on the drums, and John Lord on the keyboards. Well, from what I've read, the tour was a complete and total disaster. I know that Glenn Hughes at one point got himself arrested for very erratic behavior, and I know he was a big cocaine addict. And apparently, David Coverdale was ready to record a new album, but John Lord and Ian Pace had to sit him down and be like, Dave, I'm sorry, but there's no band left. It's over, okay? And then after that, David Coverdale formed a solo band for a very short period of time. But then in the year 1978, he put some guys together and he formed a new band called Whitesnake. And the original lineup was David Coverdale on lead vocals, Bernie Marsden on lead guitar, Mickey Moody on lead guitar, Neil Murray on bass guitar, and then Dave the Duck Doyle on drums. And they released their very first EP in the year 1978, I want to say, yes. And it was entitled Snakebite. And I thought it was kind of decent. I mean, Come On is a pretty good song. So is Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City, which is a cover. But something about the production on these very early Whitesnake albums, I'm not quite sure what it is, but it sounds very, very flat. And it doesn't quite grip me the way some of those later Deep Purple albums that had David Coverdale on lead vocals were. And I mean, the songwriting was strong. I just think the sound could have had more of a punch to it. But they released their very first full-fledged studio release in the year 1978 as well, and it was entitled Trouble. And this time, they were joined by longtime Deep Purple keyboardist John Lord, so we are now a 6-piece band. And well, there were some pretty good tracks on there, such as Take Me With You, Love to Keep You Warm, Lie Down, the title track. All of those were Don't Mess With Me as well. That's another good one. And again, I thought the songwriting was there, but again, the sound was just kind of flat and uninspired. And it's very odd because the band had some very talented musicians. Those early albums were produced by Martin the Wasp Birch, who is well known for his work with Black Sabbath, Rainbow, Iron Maiden, and he did a phenomenal job with all of those artists, but for some reason, he kind of dropped the ball with Whitesnake. I don't know what it is, but just something about the sound didn't grip me the way it should have. But then in the year 1979, they released their second studio album entitled Love Hunter. And well, we had some of the same issues. But then in 1980, Dave Doyle left the band and he was replaced by longtime Deep Purple drummer Ian Pace. So now the lineup is David Coverdale on lead vocals, Bernie Marsden, Mickey Moody, Neil Murray, Ian Pace, and John Lord. So we now have 3 out of the 5 Deep Purple members out of that last lineup. So you would think that their third studio release, Ready and Willing, would have been a huge step up. Well, again, the sound was there. I mean, we had songs like, the songwriting was there. We had songs like Ain't Gonna Cry No More and Fool for Your Lovin'. But and also Sweet Talker, that was another good one. But again, the sound was just flat. Same thing on 1981's Come and Get It. Then in 1982, they released their 5th studio release entitled Saints and Sinners. And I thought this was a definite improvement over some of the previous albums, but it still wasn't quite up to the standard that I had hoped for. And well, after Saints and Sinners, the band underwent a huge lineup change. Ian Pace was out, Bernie Marsden was out, and Neil Murray was out as well. And they were replaced by Mel Galley, Colin Hodgkinson, and Cozy Powell of all people. Yes, that Cozy Powell. But they released their 6th studio release in the year 1984, one that I have reviewed before on this channel entitled Slide It In. And yes, these guys were never known for their subtlety. And unfortunately, again, the sound was pretty flat, and it did not really sell that well initially. But everything changed later that year because David Coverdale was encouraged to re-record the album. He swapped out Mickey Moody for lead guitarist John Sykes. And then Colin Hodgkinson was replaced once again by Neil Murray, who was back. And they released the US release of Slide It In, which had a much cleaner and slicker production to it. And of course, John Sykes was not so much into the blues. He was more heavy metal. And that US release of Slide It In really sold well, and it really gave the band the big break that they were looking for. And after that, that brings me to the subject of tonight's review, which is the self-titled album Whitesnake. Now, before this album was released, David Coverdale actually had considered folding the band up, but I think it was the record producers that encouraged him to keep going because they really liked the work that David Coverdale and John Sykes did on Slide It In, and they really thought they had something. So in 1987, they finally released their self-titled album. And let's turn over on the back here. Now, do we have a lineup? Yes, we do. We are now down to a 4-piece band. This would actually be the very first actual album that did not have John Lord playing the keyboards. But anyways, David Coverdale, of course, is on lead vocals. John Sykes is on lead guitar. Neil Murray is on the bass. Yes, he has been with the band ever since Snakebite. Then we have Aynsley Dunbar, of all people, on the drums. Yes, from Journey. So let's go ahead and see what we have up here. Now, the first thing that you're probably going to notice about this album is it very much is not a blues rock album. Those first 6 albums were definite blues rock albums. This is more of a heavy metal album with touches of glam metal thrown in, which was very popular at the time. And also, you probably noticed right there, the very first song is called Crying in the Rain. Now, that's kind of interesting. That's right. On Saints and Sinners, which came out 5 years earlier, there was also a song called Crying in the Rain. And well, they decided to re-record it for this album. And again, this still has that bluesy edge to it. But the thing is this, it kind of merges the blues with heavy metal, and boy does it work. And man, when the song first starts and the band plays for just a couple of seconds and just go dun-dun-dun, and then David Coverdale just comes right in and goes, a black cat moans when he's burning with the fever, a stray dog howls when he's lonely in the night, a woman go crazy with the thoughts of retribution. But a man starts weeping when he's sick and tired of life. And yeah, we still have those blues influences on there. It's still going to dun 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 dun. But again, it's got a much slicker production, a much heavier production. And man, for whatever reason, when you mix those two genres together, at least in this instance, it works so well. And I absolutely love this song. I liked the original version, which was more of a blues song, but I love the heavy metal version. And man, much like Mistreated, which was a song David Coverdale recorded with Deep Purple, you just feel the guy's pain and torment. And he even says in the song, in the second verse, that he's been mistreated. So this was definitely clearly inspired by that song, which is absolutely legendary. But man, in the middle, there is just a killer guitar solo. And things just keep picking up and picking up and picking up. And I just love it from start to end. And man, that chorus, I mean, it's very simple. No one understands the heartbreak. No one feels the pain because nobody ever sees the tears when you're crying in the rain. And man, the harmonies are just amazing. I know I am nowhere near as good as David Coverdale, and I'm sorry if I just gave you ear torture, but I just love that song so much, and it's a definite Whitesnake classic. I've seen them twice. The first time they were opening up for Foreigner, or shall I say, the Mick Jones solo career, and they did play Crying in the Rain, and David Coverdale did his little thing where he'd sing the first little bit of the intro, then ask the audience to sing it, and yeah, I was the only one who knew the lyrics, but that's actually quite common with me. So anyways, Crying in the Rain kicks things off very well, and it's a definite improvement over the 1982 version, in my opinion. Now, I know there are people out there who think this is a sellout album. I get it. They definitely had a change in musical direction, but if you like the Saints and Sinners version better, I totally understand that and I respect that. I prefer this version. But then things pick up once again with Bad Boys, and man, this thing is just ferocious. It's fast and it's snarling, and man, it's still got that typical Whitesnake sleaze to it. And right at the beginning, David Coverdale just starts barking like a dog, goes, ow, 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 ow! And it's just amazing. But yes, I mean, it's fast, it's heavy, it's aggressive, and both times I saw them, they kicked off both the concerts with Bad Boys, and man, I gotta tell you, I was fist pumping, I was head banging, and it was really an incredible experience. So anyways, yeah, Bad Boys, very sleazy, very slick number, but man, just everything just comes together. I mean, the chorus is nothing to write home about. Bad, bad boys, and yeah, I mean, again, like I said, nothing really to it, but it just works on so many levels. But maybe not as much as track 3, Still of the Night. Wow. This is apparently left over from a jam that David Coverdale did with Ritchie Blackmore back in the Deep Purple days. And I can definitely feel it because there's still a lot of bluesy influences on this. But again, it's heavy and it's aggressive, but it's still got that bluesy feel to it, and that's why I love it so much. But yes, starts out very fast, big thunderous guitar intro, and then David Coverdale is just on fire. He's singing by himself for a while, then the band comes in, it's like then David Coverdale comes back in, sings some more, and then we just go into an amazing jam session before the entire thing in the middle gets very soft, very dark, and very mystical. Okay? And things just keep building up until the song comes back in one more time. And I just gotta say, this is a heavy metal classic. This is a blues rock or blues metal classic. Quite possibly one of the greatest songs they ever did. I love Still of the Night. Now we're gonna come to everybody's favorite song, Here I Go Again. And I'll admit, yes, this is the version I heard first. This is the version I think most people heard first. This is the version that comes on the radio all the time. And well, it's great. I really do love it. Okay, nice keyboard intro, and things are kind of soft, and again, still having kind of those blues influences, but then, man, once the band finally comes in, it's just thunderous, it's just aggressive, and man, it's got an emotional kick behind it. This, much like Crying in the Rain, is a song that was re-recorded from the Saints and Sinners album. Yes, it was actually on the Saints and Sinners album, and it was a blues rock song. It was not a heavy metal song. But again, I'm guessing he wasn't fully satisfied with the original version, so he went back and he recorded it, and I think it sounds a lot more slick, a lot more well-produced, and I like this version a lot better. And man, that guitar solo in the middle, once again, John Sykes was legendary, and it's a shame he didn't last in this band too much longer, but man, like I said, everything about it is just on point. The songwriting, the production, the emotional kick, it's incredible. Fun fact, originally, in the original 1982 version, he said, like a hobo, I was born to walk alone. I think that's what he said. But in this version, he changed the line from hobo to drifter. I think drifter works a lot better than hobo, but kind of awkward here. Apparently, he changed the word hobo because he was afraid too many people would think he was saying homo. Yeah, that didn't age well. But anyways, out of side one is absolutely legendary. I think my favorite is actually Still of the Night, but I love every song off of side one. Crying in the Rain is probably second. Then comes Bad Boys, and Here I Go Again is probably last. Maybe just because I've heard a few too many times, but it's a classic, so what are we gonna do? But then we come to side number 2. And I gotta be brutally honest. Unfortunately, I do not think side 2 works quite as well as side 1. And it might just be me, but side 2 feels a lot more glammy than side 1. I mean, maybe it's just that they put their stronger material on side 1 and I didn't notice initially all the glam on side 1. But side 2, I don't think the songwriting is quite as good. And I think, like I said, things sound a little bit more polished. But I mean, Give Me All Your Love is not a bad song. I mean, kicks off pretty well. Da-dum-dum, dum-dum, da-dum-dum, dum-dum. And I mean, it's got a nice, trotting rhythm. And I mean, I think overall it's pretty solid. Give me all your love tonight. And, that's how it goes. But again, pretty solid number, pretty solid kickoff. But then we come to a rather controversial subject. Is this love? Now, at the time, it was kind of the unwritten rule that a lot of metal bands needed to have a ballad on their album. Obviously, MTV bait. And well, it definitely worked here because Is This Love is one of their highest charting singles ever. There are power ballads that I think work very, very well. I alluded to this in another episode, but when REO Speedwagon writes power ballads, they work because they are catchy and they got the emotional kick, at least in my opinion, even though they might not be very good songs. Is This Love doesn't really hit it for me, and it's kind of a shame because I always feel like this song is building up to something and it never quite breaks, and it really sounds more like adult contemporary to me, more like something Phil Collins would do. Apparently they originally wrote this song for Tina Turner and then they decided to do their own version of it, I guess. But yeah, Is This Love is not really my favorite. I have heard it on the radio before and they played it both times I saw them, but yeah, not my thing. Then we come to Children of the Night, which, surprisingly, something I didn't touch on before. Bad Boys, Still of the Night, Children of the Night, and Straight for the Heart. The opening guitar riff on all of them sounds identical. I'm not quite sure what the deal is there. I'm not sure why they did it, but they did. But if you listen to the first 2 or 3 seconds of all 4 of those songs, it's going to be a hard time figuring out which is which because they all open up exactly the same. Interesting move, I guess. But Children of the Night is a very fast song, and usually they incorporate a segment of this when they play Bad Boys, I want to say. But, it's a pretty fast song, pretty slick, pretty sleazy, but again, not quite having the emotional kick that some of those earlier songs did off of side one. So Children of the Night is not quite my favorite. Neither is Straight for the Heart, and this one really feels pretty glammy to me. I mean, again, there is some pretty heavy guitar work on it. Again, it's pretty fast, but it sounds a lot more like pop metal in my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion of it, and I don't think Straight for the Heart is really one of their best ones. Don't Turn Away is the final song on here. This one's a little bit slower. It's not quite a power ballad, but it's definitely trying to elicit an emotional response. And I mean, I think it's catchy for what it is, but it really isn't quite my favorite either. But if I had to pick a favorite from side number 2, it's probably going to be Give Me All Your Love. I think every single song from side 1 is better than every single song from side 2, but Give Me All Your Love is definitely my favorite from side 2. But I mean, pretty solid album, and I absolutely love this album for better or worse. Now, again, many people have said, like I said, this is a pop rock sellout. A lot of people consider this a sellout. I wouldn't quite consider it pop rock or pop metal. I wouldn't even fully call it hair metal. It's definitely got some very aggressive numbers on here, and it's definitely got some very, very raw, heavy metal on it. But yeah, we are kind of teetering on the edge of glam metal, and they would go full-fledged glam metal on their following album, 1989 Slip of the Tongue. And unfortunately for me, that was kind of the point where I had it, and I was pretty much done with Whitesnake. But I mean, regardless, late 70s, the majority of the 80s, these guys were absolutely on fire, and I think this really is Whitesnake at their very best. Something I mentioned earlier, or I meant to mention earlier, David Coverdale, for some reason to me, reminded me a lot of Sammy Hagar. Maybe not, but I think their voices were pretty similar. I used to get them confused and mixed up a lot when I was younger, but yeah, fun fact, I think he sounds a lot like Sammy Hagar. But do I recommend this album? Absolutely, I do. Even side 2, which, like I said, is teetering on glam metal, I don't think it's bad, and I think there is some good stuff on there, but really, Whitesnake at their finest is side 1 of this album. So anyways, that is going to conclude my review of Whitesnake, the album, not necessarily the band, because I will definitely be talking about them again in some other context. But anyways, next week, we're going to talk about an album that I cannot live without. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.